Good afternoon. Welcome to BookFest. My name is Laurie King. I am here because I am the Northern California chapter president of the Mystery Writers of America, and we invited Walter, and he was gracious enough to accept. So I get to interview him. Ha ha. And you too, if you get to be president of NorCal. You could be up here if you were really lucky. So, Walter Mosley. I mean, if ever there's a person who needs no introduction, but you still give him an introduction, Walter is, I think, one of those.
I'm one of those guys.
Yeah.
They're the people who don't need introduction.
Yeah.
Period.
However, having said that, I want to introduce him by saying that Walter Mosley calls himself a novelist. But in addition to his 43 works of fiction, which span the range from hard-boiled PI to young adult to speculative sci-fi to blues fiction, with 14 in the Easy Rawlins series and 5 Leonid McGill's, he has 6 nonfiction works, including 2 non-memoir memoirs, stage plays, and various short story collections. Walter's a great proponent of small presses and libraries. Go! And his awards range from Grammy to honorary doctorate with awards from PEN America, the NAACP, Sundance, and last year he was named a Grand Master of the Mystery Writers of America, which gives us an excuse to bring him. So. Now, one problem with somebody with that kind of background is it is very difficult to focus in on anything with an interview. So it's a problem for people like me, because it's sort of like the shotgun effect, is that I kind of have, so I have this wild variety of questions that I'm just going to kind of toss out there and let you, and I'm sure nobody here is going to complain because it's going to be mostly you talking about you. That work for you guys?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, the only son of a Russian Jewish mother and an African American father, who jumped a freight train, his father did, jumped a freight train at the age of 8 and basically lived on his own from that point on. His father ended up owning 3 apartment buildings in California where the tenants assumed he was the handyman. His father came to California for the tattered shelter of mocking freedom that the Golden State had to offer people like him, poor people willing to work hard. Now, if your father and mother had ended up in New York instead, how would Walter Mosley be a different person today?
God, what a question. I don't know. My mother's from New York. My father from Louisiana. I really, it's an interesting question, but I don't think I have an answer for it. The question
We're
is
starting off well, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, the question, is Los Angeles the place that formed me more than my parents? That would be the question. And I'm not sure about that. I mean, how can you ever be sure about things like that? I was raised by my parents, and it was very close. Not only am I an only child, my mother was an only child, my father was an orphan. So, I have no family except for, my parents, and who are now dead, so I have no family. And so I think that a lot of what happened might be the same, unless the city had different impact on them. And they have very strong personalities. And my mom was from New York, so I think things would have been the same. It was better in California at that time because everything was growing. Everything was growing and spreading out, and there was much more integration because, you had to have people working together as they came to the city. So there's that. But I don't, so I could talk about the difference in the cities, but I can't talk about the difference in me because I don't know what that would be.
Fair enough. Now, you were, as we said, born and raised in Southern California. You then launched on a your long hair hippie phase, which I think we would all enjoy seeing.
I know, me too. I'm bald now, so like, you know, because, you know, like, I'd be very happy to have my long-haired hippie phase, but no.
Including, to my interest, Santa Cruz. So I sort of envisioned that you and I must have walked past each other in the streets of Santa Cruz at some point, which is sort of involved. Any Doctor Who fans here? You then developed an interest in political science and ended up giving that up to do computers, which boggles the mind a little. You are remembering your computer
First
days.
I did programming, then I did political theory, and then I went back to programming.
And ended up working for Mobil Oil?
Mobil Oil was the last place, but, you know, a lot of, you know, it was business programming. A lot of that, you know, it's like one of those trades that people, and not so much now, but like, you know, when I started doing it, you didn't even have to know anything about computers. They just hired you. And if you did okay, then they kept you, and if you didn't, they fired you, you know. And, you know, that was the way it was. You know, I had a lot of fun doing it, you know.
You took a writing course at City College in Harlem, and you started writing in your mid-30s, and published in the late 80s. Talk to me a little about why so few of us begin straight out of college at the age of 22. I mean, there are a few professional writers I know of who began really early. Most of us start in our 30s.
Is that true? I didn't know that.
Certainly in crime, certainly in the crime world.
Yeah, that's 'cause you didn't get caught in your 20s, that's all. Like, for me, I was, you know, I was explaining, see, I'm in California now, so it's like, it's different. Like, you know, most people say, how did I come to, you know, writing so late? Because most people think it is late. I always say, well, you know, I'm from California. You know, California is a place, you know, like in the rest of the world, you know, like people used to retire at 65, but now let's say they retire at 77. Like, you know, a woman retires at 77, and they say, well, you know, anywhere else in the country, they say, what are you going to do? She would say, I'm going to spend time with my grandchildren. But in California, she says, well, you know, I'm very limber, and I can touch my toes, so I'm thinking of starting a ballet company of people my age. And then 2 years later, you know, they're performing for Barack Obama, you know, with the Grey Panther, you know, ballet company. You know, and it's like, you know, so like, you know, I was just, you know, doing this, doing that, you know, I was living in the East Coast, but I'm still a Californian at heart. So like, I would be like, well, you know, I'm programming, but maybe I'll be a cook. No, a musician. No, I have no ear. Well, writing, that sounds good. Let's try that, you know, and then it happened.
It's better than working.
It's certainly better than working, yeah. Unless you don't get paid, and then it's kind of bad. But, you know, because then you're writing and working.
Many of us are, yes. Now, Easy Rawlins. Let's talk a little about Easy Rawlins. He is a tough, violent, hard-boiled hero. And yet, when we first meet him in The Devil in a Blue Dress, he was a man worried about his mortgage.
Yeah.
In Charcoal Joe, he talks about the book club that he's a member of. And he is vulnerable to all kinds of wickedness because he has kids. Would you talk a little about the complexity of heroes?
Well, you know, the interesting thing about the PI, which is very much an American, you know, phenomenon, not only, but very much so, that you know, it starts off very existentialist. You know, people like, you know, Hammett and Kane and MacDonald and you know, oh my God, what's his name? I forgot his name. Chandler. Yeah, like you know, they're existentialist heroes. It's, you know, it's a white man who doesn't have a wife or a child or a brother or a sister or a mother or a regular house or never drives the same car. I mean, his life is completely open. He just goes. So if they arrest him, and they say, well, we need your information about this guy, he doesn't have to give it. You just put him in jail, and he would just say, I'm going to wait, because I'm going to stick by my guns, which is fine, except if you have like a kid or even a dog, you gotta feed your dog. If you can't stay, you say, well, I'm going to stay in jail till my dog dies, and so the idea of actually saying to have those same existentialist issues, that people like Camus talk about, in a world where you have responsibilities in that world, becomes more interesting. And I think that's more, it's not just me. I think a lot of people, are doing that and thinking about that. And it's really, it's for me, it's very interesting because Easy has troubles, kind of folded inside of troubles, figuring out what to do.
As Mouse said, I couldn't live like you, Brother Easy. The uniform banging on the front door and a cougar lurking out back.
Yeah, and he wasn't talking about an elderly woman or anything.
No. Although he could have been.
He could have been. But it was a real cougar.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting because I think that what we're seeing in these 14 Easy Rawlins books is the creation of a family man. There's obviously other things going on there, but one of the real appeals of a series is that for people like you and like me who write a series that follows development, it's not like the Jack Reacher books, they really can be read completely interchangeably because he doesn't really change essentially from one book to the next, whereas Easy does.
Which is why he sold 50 million copies.
Yeah.
No, it's true. The gentleman here in the Panama hat and I were talking before. One of the things about Easy is that it was really important for me to create a character that black men would read as a fictional character because, there's hardly any black heroes in the whole history of American literature. I'm hardly any, and even today, hardly any. And people read, for like to have a hero. And one of the reasons people read Jack Reacher is, it is the same book, but he's a hero, and you can identify with him and stuff. But for black men, it becomes more complex because what our lives are has not been in literature. It's just not there. Even people like Chester Himes and a lot of people from that generation are writing books where there's so much trying to answer moral political questions that you don't have like the social life. Have somebody with a kid, somebody, with good friends, somebody in a book club, whose friends, one guy is working, for an insurance company and another guy is doing heists around the nation, whatever business you're good at, but like the thing is that, but that's the life you're leading, and so many of us know that life, maybe not as on such a high level, but we know it. And have never seen it in literature. And that's what was really, I think, important to me in the beginning, to create a hero, a series of heroes, of black male heroes who people could, identify with. Not just black people, but that was my hardest audience to get them to start to read the books, which, happened after a few years, which is great.
You say that your father had a talent for taking the beauty and leaving the rest. Would you say that that's what Easy Rawlins is after as well?
Well, yeah, I think that he makes the difference between Easy Rawlins and Fearless Jones is this: Fearless is in the old sense a comedy, and Easy is like a tragedy, and so if you're in trouble and you're in enough trouble that you need an Easy Rawlins, you're in a lot of trouble. Like, by the end, if you live, that's probably the worst thing, like in Black Betty, and in Fearless's books, everything's good at the end. You get some money, the beautiful women are running after you. It's great, but Easy, so yeah, he wants to get the beauty, and he's a beautiful person, meaning to say he represents those people in his community who otherwise are ignored and not represented. But I think often he finds a lot more ugliness than my father did. My father said, all I have to do is avoid that ugliness, and he runs right into it.
Which is why we love him.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk a little about your writing life. I thought I was doing well because I have 30 novels and an assortment of other projects, but you are dauntingly prolific, Walter. And you do a certain amount of social media. I mean, your blog posts are really, if any of you have not read Walter's blog posts, they're not regular in the sense of every week, but they're really a very interesting assortment of reflections and about the various books and about things that are going on. And you are very clear that you don't tweet.
No.
So without
a lot of you do, I know, but that's okay.
Without the social media, I mean, what is your writing life like?
Writing life is very simple. I wake up every morning, I write for 3 hours. That's like, every morning. This morning, I got up and I wrote for 3 hours. And, then there's a day in front of you. You can do anything you want, and it's created a lot of books, but is there something more to that question than that? It's it's just the idea. I really, really love writing, and I really understand where a lot of people don't, or at least don't want you to think they understand, that most of writing and most of art is unconscious, right? It's not something you really think about. You do it, and then the next day you look at it and say, "Wow, that looks like there's an idea in here. Let me try to tease that out, and I really, it's so much fun, that it allows me to continue working, day after day after day, and never be unhappy with that, which is, you can't think of anything better. I can't think of anything better that I would want to be doing. Like how people in basketball want to do hip hop, and people in hip hop want to do basketball. I'm like, I just want to write. I'm happy. I don't need to do basketball. Though I really do love Kareem, even before he started writing about me in the New York Times.
Oh yeah. Now you've done a couple, as I mentioned, you've done a couple of memoirs, and one of them is what you call a semi-surrealist memoir called The Graphomaniac's Primer.
You got that?
Or Primer.
Have you seen that?
I've seen parts of it, not the whole thing.
Okay,
but Now, do you find that those kinds of things and writing about political activism and the non-novel part or non-fiction part of your life, do you find it helps writing the fiction when you go back to it, or is it a completely separate part of your life?
I don't know if it helps writing fiction, honestly. I ran into a guy who kind of blamed me for plagiarizing some of my fiction in my most recent nonfiction book, Folding the Red into the Black. And I went, wow, I plagiarized myself. That's amazing. but
No, we're Californians. It's recycling.
Oh, right, recycling. That's right, recycling. But I write. I'm political in as much as I write about people in situations which are problematic, like on social levels here. But I don't take sides. I just write about it. This one thinks this. I mean, Mouse, I'm sure, would be an arch conservative if he ever thought about politics. And Jackson Blue has his way of thinking, and so does Easy and Etta May and all those people. But when I really want to say something, when I really want to say, well, this is what I believe, then I have to write one of my non-fictional monographs. So I say, this is what I think, and I don't have to kind of play around and say, well, I don't by characterization or plot or anything that people might like. You don't have to like my nonfiction. It's not that I don't care. It's just that it is what it is. It's like your nose. So I don't like your nose. Well, I wish I could do something about that. I wish you liked it.
Yes. Can I change it for you?
Yeah.
I think people in our genre usually are writing towards the idea of entertainment. But there's almost always some kind of subtext or agenda, I think especially in the series books, because you find that there's a thematic element that you're, certainly as a writer, I am aware of when I'm working on books. A lot of your books, and maybe arguably most of them, are built on foundations, sort of twin foundations of rage and hope. Are you aware of that interplay, or what is it that you would like readers to take away from your stories, other than the entertainment? Because I think we all value entertainment, and I personally am always honored when someone says that I have offered them escape from, you know, I'm sure that you have had people say that they had a sick mother, or they were watching over someone in a hospital bed, and they used your book as an escape. And that really is a lovely feeling, to know that you helped somebody get through a tough time. But often you're also aware of that hope that someone will take away something subversive at the end of it. Now, are you aware of planting subversion in people's minds, Walter?
Well, you know, that's an interesting question, because I have so many different kinds of readers. You know, like I'm not telling black people anything they don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's like you know, it's like when Easy is you know, at 7 o'clock in the morning in the last book, he's going to this kind of special kind of like a country club jail, but it doesn't open until 11 because it's country club, and so he has to. He's down at the beach, and he walks up to the edge of the water, and he's just looking out at the ocean, and then all of a sudden somebody behind him says, "Excuse me," but you know, Easy knows that "excuse me."
Yeah.
It's not the "excuse me" of the guy who wants to get by and go jump in the water. It's the policeman that says "excuse me," and he stops him at the only place that you can't say that you don't belong there. Like, it's the beach. Like, people go to the beach, you know, to loiter. You know, they go there to hang out. Like, you know, it's like, you know, you're not supposed to be headed somewhere. But the policeman, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Man, it's a beach." You know, and it's like, and you know, a lot of people don't understand that. They haven't experienced it. They haven't seen it. And you know, and this book, I think I have it happen to Easy like 4 times. And a couple of books before, a little bit earlier, it happens 4 times in the same place. You know, it's like coming in, going out, coming in, going out, and the police, they're stopping him all over the place. And not just the police, other people too. "What are you doing here? You don't belong here." And I think that, you know, somebody might read it and it might mean something to them. I think that a lot of people in America, you know, one of the interesting things about America is that they're used to, you know, I don't believe in the existence of white people. I just want to say this. I mean, the notion of a white person is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. It's only mildly less ridiculous to be called a black person. You know, it's like, you know, I mean, I can understand a French person, you know. I can understand, you know, a Polynesian person or a pygmy. I said, "That's a pygmy." Okay, I got it. That's a pygmy. You know, but you know, the idea. But people think they're white, and nobody wants to give up being white, because that's a kind of a privilege, you know, whether they know it or not. But the thing that's happened in America, and the reason that we've had this recent election, is because all of a sudden, white people realize they've been treated differently. They haven't quite realized yet that they're being treated like the black people have been being treated. But that's the thing. But when they read my book, they go, "You know, this is familiar here. You know, why doesn't he have sympathy for me?" You know, and I'm like, "Oh, you know, if you have that experience, you know." So it's a different. I'm talking to different people from different places. Lots of women, you know, who also understand how black people feel, because, you know, inside, you know, the white fort, they're being treated like that. "Well, you know, you're supposed to work and do this and this, and you know, I'm supposed to make more and do better because I'm a man," you know, and a white man, which is kind of a funny notion, you know, that, as I said before, I don't believe in. But I have to use those terms because it's the world that we live in. And so I think that, you know, and I think it's true with all literature, as you come to it, whatever you're ready to think. And also, you know, a lot of people who read my books are smarter than I am. They come up to me and said, "Well, you know, when Easy said this, that seemed like a dialectical reinterpretation." of Wittgenstein when he tries to say, and I just go, yes, I meant that. I'm glad you got it. You're the first person who got that. I don't add that even the first person before me, you know. I always say that I meant it because it's unconscious. I said, well, it must have come from somewhere, but I think that if you try your best to be true to your characters and the characters have some kind of depth to them, I think that people can take away what how they see the world, and I'm talking about my father's generation, even though I'm not talking completely from that point of view anymore. My father's generation, they were in World War II. It was a change. My father, I say this often, I asked my father once, I said, were you afraid to be in the war? And he said, no, I wasn't afraid to go. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, I thought it was the Americans versus the Germans. And I said, it was, Dad. And he goes, yeah, but I didn't know I was an American, He said, but when those Germans started shooting at me, I knew I was an American. This is really learning, right? This is a real learning experience. And I think that those people were so interesting, all of those people, in LA, and up here, and in Chicago and also on the East Coast, people who were in many ways immigrants to America. Mm-hmm. They were like immigrants. They didn't come from another country, but they were immigrants to America. And the way they learn, and when you write about the way they learn, you can learn a lot from it. It's just the same way that I learned from my parents.
So when you were writing the first of the Easy Rawlins series, you chose to make him follow roughly the chronology of your dad. That is through the war and then the 50s in L.A. Say something about how that reflects the changes in the country as a whole, because being a Californian, I tend to think that I don't believe in the rest of the country because California is, surely everybody acts this way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but California is a weird place,
It's not.
California has had the most lynchings of any other state. Like, it's wild. A lot of them were white people who got lynched, or so-called white people, excuse me, that got lynched. But, but your question, so I got lost in that question because of the thing California.
What are you enjoying about, now you're obviously working your way up from the 50s into the 60s and so forth, but what are you enjoying about revisiting that period? When you first start, it's barely your period because you were born in 52. But the growth of California and the growth of the nation.
All right, there's a couple answers. The thing about the barely my period, it isn't, because, if you're born in 1952, that means the people who you were born around were born like in 1940, 1935, 1930. And when you're a little kid, it's only their stories that you listen to. So you're really aware of that history because you love these people and you just like concentrate everything they say, every story they tell. You interpret it, of course, but so there's that. And then there's the idea of me talking about something that I know and that I experience in a language that I understand, and with those people. And then it's the most, for me, it's the most important thing, even if it's not the most enjoyable, is that, you don't exist if you're not in fiction. Let's be clear. If you're not in fiction, you don't exist. Nobody reads history books. This is a fact. They just don't, they say they do, and they buy a book every once in a while, this kind of pop, but nobody knows the history of anything, and not only in America, though America is really guilty of it, but all through, other places, you just don't know, and what you do know is not true. For instance, I'm making a movie out of my book, The Man in My Basement, and this guy, William Oldroyd, has made a thing called, it's called Lady Macbeth of Minsk, I think. But it's happening in England in the 1860s, North England. And there's all these black people in him. It's kind of wonderful to see, but when people ask him about it, he goes, well, me and my group, we were looking up photographs from the 1860s, and there were a lot of black people there. But The BBC's been making these things forever, these goddamn things forever, with no black people at all. Only white people. They want, because that's all they want. They just want white people to be there. They don't know that there's any black people or any other, kind of people. And to be able to write a series of somewhat popular fiction where people are actually reading about it actually includes us in history, makes us a part of that history. And so, people begin to think differently about where they came from and where they're going, That's the thing I think is most important.
There's a lovely phrase that you use somewhere.
Well, thank you.
From the White House to Gilligan's Island, words are scattered, making us laugh and sending us to war.
I did write that, didn't I?
Yeah.
I don't remember where, but yeah.
You're good.
Yeah.
The power of words and what you can do with stories is I think a perfect example with what you're doing in the Easy Rawlins stories. Is laughter and entertainment the goal in them?
Well, laughter, crying, outrage, passion, all of that. Like if you can get somebody to feel something from a character's point of view, then they identify with that character, whether they like him or not. I mean, a lot of people love Mouse. They don't want to do the things that Mouse does, but they wish they could. And so I think that when you get to them, or somebody like Paris Minton or Jackson Blue are so cowardly, but at the same time so brilliant, it's the idea of identifying with any feeling from a character that all of a sudden you identify with and move with is wonderful. I think, I know it's true. In Dickens, when the old woman, I think it's from Dombey and Son, there's the old woman, and she's wearing gray and black, and she's sitting in this room, and there's all this light cascading in, and a young, beautiful woman in this flowing white dress come in and says, "Auntie, are you in pain?" Because she looks like she is. And the woman says, "There's a pain somewhere in this room. I'm not certain if it's in me." I'm like, damn. It's like Charles Dickens. I mean, you don't have to write anything else, as far as I'm concerned. Though he did write the thing where he was talking about this guy. He says he was less a man and more a swollen boy. I'm like, whoa, damn. I don't want to get on Dickens' wrong side, man. Shit. It's like, but that's the thing. When you can put that much feeling into your writing, especially through characters, Bill Sykes and Nancy, Huckleberry Finn, realizing that he has to be evil in order to do what's right, which is to free Jim. All that stuff is like great. Call me Ishmael. I mean, that's the best first line I've ever read in my life. Call me Ishmael. It's like he's inviting you in the book. Come on, take a walk.
Not to give anyone in this room spoilers. Sorry. You kill off Easy and Blonde Faith.
Yeah.
Sort of.
It was a while ago.
Sort of.
He's still alive. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it was a spoiler for some of you, huh? Conan Doyle did the same thing when he pushed somebody off a cliff and then decided, well, maybe I got bills to pay. And I did the same thing last year when I published a book called The Murder of Mary Russell, and everyone said, oh, no, and I said, just wait till you see it. Can you, give us an idea of when you kill somebody off, what do you do with a character who just refuses to die?
Well, I didn't think he was dead. I mean, he said the last word in the novel. How could you be dead if you say the last word? But nobody seemed to think that. But it's fine with me. I didn't know it was going to happen. What happened was Easy he was drunk after a very long time of not drinking, and he'd lost the woman that he loved, and he's driving down up Pacific Coast Highway, and he passes one car, you know, and then he passes another car, and then he passes one, but there's a truck coming, but there's a shoulder, so he gets over on the shoulder, but then the shoulder runs out, and so he goes off the cliff. And I didn't expect that. I was just writing, and I went, whoa, damn, he ran off the cliff. Shit, what am I gonna do? You know? But then, you know, and then I thought, well, you wrote it, and I know that one of the things is I really liked Blonde Faith, but I couldn't think of anything else to write about easy, and I knew that. And what I wanted to do was, I said, well, I can stop now, you know, and then, you know, and the reason I couldn't think of it, it wasn't until a few years later that I realized is that I'd run out of stories from my father and his family, and now I had to talk from my point of view. We were, you know, so then we start, you know, with Little Green, and he's, you know, up on the Sunset Strip. My friend Mark and I, you know, we're like, you know, Mark's the first person who ever got me high, you know. It was like in his backyard at 1900 Durango. We like got really high back there, you know, and we laughed a lot, you know. But like, we would go up to the Sunset Strip. You know, back then, like, there's like 10,000 barefoot hippies just walking up and down the street. And it was amazing. It was wonderful. My father had no idea about that story, but I did. And so I said, well, I'm going to start writing that story. You know, and you know, I knew people who had been in Vietnam and all this other stuff. And again, it was different than my father. And so as soon as I just said, well, I'm going to write still from Easy's point of view, but my father's going to kind of fade and there's going to be something else going on, I went, wow, I can do that. You know, that's easy, you know. No pun intended.
So you killed him off you killed off the era by killing him off.
Though I didn't know I was doing that. But I did. Yeah.
Now, which brings up the question of your method of writing. I take it you're not an outliner.
Every once in a while I outline, but I never follow them. But I outline. I go, this happened. You know, I do this like one.
Easy dies.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I didn't have that. But, you know, things can change. You know, sometimes I outline, you know, when you have to finish something, like, you know, there's a deadline, and, you know, you just can't kind of, you know, wander around saying, oh, that was good. No, that's not so good. No, I like this. No. You know, you just have to keep, you know, so you have to stick to the plan. You know, so sometimes I do. But I don't if I don't have to.
So you started writing before you actually took a degree in writing, yeah?
Yeah, I never got a degree in writing, but yes, I started writing. I studied in this guy's house, and he didn't like me, so he kicked me out of the workshop. And so I said, well, I got to do something else. So I went to City College, and that was really a lot of fun. Edna O'Brien taught there. Oh my God, she's so wonderful. And, William Matthews, the extraordinary American poet, taught there. The only thing I took every semester was poetry workshop. I'm a really bad poet. Really bad, but I know, you know, the only way you can write fiction is to understand poetry, is the way I understand it, and so I did that, but I had already started writing, and you know, that was fun.
So, where did you learn the language of writing? Were you a big reader when you were a kid? And what were you reading, if so?
I read, you know, I never think that reading and writing are necessarily related. It's like, you know, you would say on your stepsister's side, you know, well, my stepsister's uncle, you know, is reading, you know, but I'm writing, you know, and you can do it or you can not do it. I know a lot of people don't like when I say that, but I think it's true. I think it was true for Homer because he was blind and illiterate. So I mean, I don't think he was doing much reading, you know, and a lot of the poets, you know, which is where rhyme comes from, you know. So in order to remember it, you have to rhyme because you can't write. But I like reading a lot, you know. I mean, science fiction was the thing I kind of liked the most, I think. But I love reading stories. I love good language. I've always really loved good language. But, you know, one of the things is, you know, you got people on street corners who can tell stories. I mean, you just die for those stories. Like, damn, this guy can tell a story, you know. And then not thinking about writing, they could be writers. You know what I mean? You know, a lot of people just really love it, and you know, and you know, some are good at it and some are not, but they keep doing it anyway, and you know, that's okay. But you know, I do read, and I did read when I was a kid, and I liked it, and I think just the last big group of reading I had done before I started being a writer was noir stuff, you know, even though my first book wasn't noir. I followed it through, you know. But you know, this is like, you know, I went to the Dodge Poetry Festival in New Jersey. First year it started, way back, like 30 years ago, and I was writing, but I hadn't got anything published. And there was all these poets, you know, Carolyn Forche, Ruth Stone, Lucille Clifton, and for those of you who don't know him, you should, Etheridge Knight. Forche says she became a poet when the dictator whose table she was sitting at in South America, she said, well, you know, you should have empathy for your enemies. And he took out a bag of mummified ears and threw them on the table and said, those are my enemies. She said, that made her a poet. And I said, I don't know if I want to go that far. Ruth Stone talked about poverty and, you know, poverty, and, you know, living in Vermont. I'd lived in Vermont, so I knew what she was talking about. I went, wow, I want to go back there. And then Lucille Clifton said she was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize, and she was living in her car with her 4 daughters. I say, damn, you're right. I mean, like, that's not the profession you want to go into. So, well, you know, you see that bed of coals? We need you to walk across that before we're going to, you know, maybe pay you. So then Etheridge, who had been in prison for 8 years for armed robbery, said, when I can remember it so well, I said, when I became a poet, I was in the penitentiary. He said, when I defined myself as a poet, I was in the penitentiary. And he said, once I had defined myself as a poet, I went to the library to figure out what it was I had become. And I was like, oh my God, I could write because of this man who's been in prison for a decade, you know, because, you know, it was that thing, you know, it's something wonderful and enjoyable, and you don't want to tell anybody, well, if you don't do this or you don't do that, or, you know, look, if you want to write, write. If it works, it does. If it doesn't work, maybe you need to learn something, you know what I mean? And that's the way I've always, like, approached it, you know? Yeah, love Etheridge. He's a great poet. Galway Kinnell once told me, he said, that, what was it? I forget, there were 2 poets, I forget the other one, but there are 2 poets, the best readings he'd ever heard, and one of them was Etheridge Knight, you know, and you should read his work, you know, because he's one of those people who doesn't like think you have to learn, you know, Middle Hebrew or ancient Greek in order to understand a poem, you know what I mean? It's like, it's so mad. I said, what, do you know ancient Greek? I said, man, what do I look like, you know? And they go, what, then you can't read my poetry? I said, well, then I ain't going to buy your book, you know?
You were 12 when you traveled across LA to perform in a civil rights play through the midst of the Watts riots.
Right.
And you were 49 when you were standing on the phone at your window one day and you looked out at a plane flying into the Twin Towers.
Yes.
You write, today we need more than John Wayne and the Winchester rifle. Today we need the subtle compassion of Black America with its fine-honed attention to the etiquette of liberation, which I think anyone who claims not to be a poet with that sentence is lying to himself. Talk to us about where this country is going. Where are we going with our John Waynes and our fine-honed attention to the etiquette of liberation?
Yeah, well, you know, that's a very broad and complex question, of course. What I was talking about in that essay was that, you know, like, because, you know, we you know, I mean, it's like waging war on Vietnam because you're afraid they're going to join the Chinese. They've been hating the Chinese for 1,000 years. What's going to make them join them? You know, like, they're not stupid. They don't think that communism actually defines culture. You know, it defines, you know, maybe how they work. But they're not going to join the Chinese. But we're killing them. I mean, by the millions, and supporting these incredible fascists, Tu and Key, to you know, and in order to, you know, kill these people who are just looking to be liberated and who, you know, don't care about us, you know? Even now, I mean, the fact that they've forgiven us is just amazing to me, you know? I mean, that's one thing, you know, and I think that when you come from a place where you've had to struggle every day against forces and powers that are greater than you, that don't understand, you know, how to respect humanity in a person, who might look somewhat different or act somewhat different or talk somewhat different. That's the issue. And so that's that question. That's why I think that, black people should be, leading America right now and for quite a while in understanding how to deal with oppression, which is, what everybody's always responding against. But, right now, I'm like, I'm different than all my friends, because, I look at Trump and I'm like, I just laugh, man. I have so much fun. I'm saying, God, there's more political organization now than there has been since me and Mark were around in the late 60s, early 70s. People are actually moving forward and create, and not only moving forward, but dealing with each other, not fighting. Not, like how the left there's always infighting on the left. No infighting. People say, yeah, man, I'm against abortion. Yeah, man, I'm against, getting rid of these people. I'm against keeping the Muslims out. And they're all working together. Russell Simmons, came to New York. I don't know if they were talking about that here. He came to New York, and he had all these people, Buddhists and Catholics and Jews and atheists, all wearing signs saying, "I am Muslim," right? Like, there's nobody but Trump who could get us to do that, nobody. It's like, you got an atheist calling himself a Muslim? Oh my God, and it's like, but it's great because that's kind of what you need, and I think that my view of that is partially, the wit, of African America, which is can look at, and also from my mother's side, from Jewish America and the Jewish world, like you just learn how to laugh at the pain. What's that thing in Fiddler on the Roof in the movie, where when the one guy says, to the rabbi, says, is there a blessing for the czar? And he says, oh, yes. God bless and keep the czar far away from us. It's just like, wow, that's my family. I don't know. Yeah, both sides,
Yeah, from your mouth to God's ear, thank you. We're going to open it for questions in just a minute. I'd like you to talk first about what projects are coming up. What are you doing? What are you doing? Kind of a little bit not completely true. I've taken a year and a half off writing fiction, and I've been working on a variety of television shows and movies, trying to just write stuff that I would really like to see. So there's an Easy Rawlins pilot that I just finished for FX. We'll see if they do it. We're doing that movie, The Man in My Basement. I've had all kinds of trouble with them. I have another film that I was working with for Candy Alexander, about a woman who's, becomes aware of something that happened long ago, and she's seeking, revenge. Just a variety of things like that. A whole bunch of them, maybe 12 projects or something. But in the meanwhile, there's three things. I wrote a book. I worked on a book for, 20 years, whatever, called John Woman. It's nobody wants to publish it because it's not a mystery. It's about a deconstructionist historian. I just say that to people and their eyes turn off, but it's really wonderful. I really like that book. And then I wrote a mystery about a guy, an ex-policeman, who's representing another guy who reminds me somewhat of Mumia. When you wonder when the police come in and say, well, you have a completely lawless police department, and then you get mad at somebody for having to shoot out with the cops. It's like, and so I wrote that, though they made me change the name of it. And then I wrote a children's book, maybe 6, 7, 8 years old, about a little brown mouse. And so those books they were finished before I took off, and then so I just sold them so I could pay myself while I was, taking off, and so I've been working a little bit on those books. I think that's everything. Keeping you busy. Yeah. Very good. I simply, before we go to questions, and there is a young woman who has a mic over there. This lady in the hat has a mic, and she needs you to talk into it because some of us have small voices. I'd like to remind you that there will be a signing afterwards. Do buy books. Walter has a strong hand. And I think they may have some books of mine out there too. I don't know. If so, I will sign them. The sponsor for this one, as I think you probably have guessed, is the Mystery Writers of America, Northern California chapter. I am going to put some flyers, and there's event flyers that will go, they'll probably stick them on the table, and we have a booth out there, so please come by and see them. If you liked this event, do support Mystery Writers of America. And I think that's probably my business stuff. So let us do questions. In the back there, in the glasses. Sorry.
So in the middle.
No, in the back, further
back.
Further back. Yeah. That was the first hand that rose up.
Stand up. Hi.
Hello.
I'm wondering if there's any difference for you in writing science fiction as opposed to mystery fiction, and how does it feel different?
Yeah, well, it is different. Like, when I wrote the first, like, kind of alternative kind of book I wrote was Blue Light, and I really in my heart wanted, because I'm not spiritual in any way, shape, or form, but I do believe in the soul. So I wanted to write a book that in which I could get a character or the book to articulate the soul. And, like, why would I write a mystery to do that? Like, that would be like the craziest thing in the world. And so, it fit, it worked, And, when I was going through kind of like a sexual spate of time, I wrote Killing Johnny Fry, because, I guess I could have written a mystery that was an erotic novel, but why bother? You could just write an erotic novel. So I think that, whatever the thing is I'm trying to do, the form fits it.
How about here in the red shirt?
I just wanted to know, when you write with a deadline, how does that affect your creativity? Writing for pleasure is one thing, but writing under a deadline, does that affect you?
Well, I never missed a deadline, so no. It's just like, I'm really, like, I didn't used to be like this, but I'm really good at saying, oh, in July, this book has to be finished. So, it's finished in July. I might finish it in May, but I turn it in July, like when I'm supposed to. So I try to keep ahead of it. And part of it is because I just like doing it so much. I think my friends who are writers who really, writing is really hard on them and painful for them, that's where you kind of get into that trouble, because the deadline is painful, but also is the writing. That's, it depends on which one you feel worse about, Yeah.
How about the lady in the red shirt here? Can we?
Step on all those toes. Wham, wham.
I enjoyed the earlier books about Socrates, and I believe there were two?
There's 3 in all.
Maybe 3?
Yeah.
That's a character you didn't continue much with. Are you contemplating doing something else with Socrates, or is there a reason you kind of stopped at 3? Well,
Socrates is a long gestation period, each one of those books, the short stories, because I'm really inside of him as a kind of a resident philosopher in America, and so it takes a long time. So there's like 5 or 6 years between each book. So it's time for me to write another one. And I'm trying to do a film, a TV show. One of those projects is the Socrates television series, and which I think would be great. But, a lot of people say, well, but what happens next? I say, well, just tune in, you'll see. But they don't listen to that. So, it's hard. But no, I keep working on it. And I love working on Socrates. I think, he's a wonderful character.
In the blue shirt there?
Is it on? Oh, she's holding it for me. I can hold it. I'll give it back to you, I promise. Okay.
That's the rules.
I know you're speaking tomorrow on the stage around, more explicitly about political things. Mm-hmm. How do you, I'm just interested, like, when Black Lives Matters happened, or in this, when, do you consciously think about how to how to interweave that into your fiction, or is that what you're saying about the other part of you where you're going to write essays or nonfiction? Like, is there a way that what's happening in the world and what you're thinking about what's happening with Black people gets integrated into your books?
I don't really try to blend political arguments into a book, because all of a sudden, like, you're starting to lecture people about stuff, and so they can't make up their own mind, which is actually the best way for things to happen. Certainly when I write the nonfiction, I'm thinking about it. But my notion about fiction, just in general, is follows that if you're a Black male hero in America, your life is going to be very political, because you just all the time you're going to be facing problems. You're going to be stopped by the Rodney King policeman. One day I was in a car, and one of those guys he was a limo driver, and he was driving me. It was funny because I was saying things that was making him really mad, and I didn't know why. And then he told me, he said, I was one of those people, and I did what's right, and here's a book I wrote, and he gave me his book. But so, like, I mean, whatever I'm doing, it's political, but it's social and political. It's not like the idea that somebody's going to be your leader. It's problematic, because if they're your leader, they're and you're giving your power to them, and so then when they're either bought off or shot or whatever, then your power is gone, because it went with them. So, like, it's a continual dialogue, especially in fiction.
In the black shirt.
I'm wondering how you get to know your characters for your fiction pieces. In nonfiction, you kind of know who they are, but in fiction, you're making them up. But how do you get to know them? Do you have conversations with them?
Really, that's actually a very, complex question, because there's another question that people ask, and they'll say, how do you know when your book is finished? And I said, well, you write a draft,
Your character drives off a cliff.
That's right. You write the book, and it's a draft, and you look at it, and you see things are wrong, and you fix them. And then you do another draft, and you see things are wrong, and you fix them. And you do another draft, and you see things are wrong, fix them. And you keep doing it. Finally, at some point, you go through the book, you see things are wrong, and you don't know how to fix them. So then it's finished, right? Like, you can only go as far as you can go. This is a very important thing for you obsessive people who are writing, because you think, I'm going to wait till it's perfect. You say, well, it's never going to get printed, because there are no perfect books. And the notion is, so like in the new Easy Rawlins, Fearless Jones has a big part in that book. And Fearless tells this story about how his uncle, when he was a kid, he and his uncle would go out and hunt wild boar with a Bowie knife. And it was really dangerous, because, you had to get the boar after you, and once he came after you, you had to kill him quick, because you didn't kill him, he was going to kill you. That was a fact, right? And I wrote that, and I went, wow, so that's why Fearless is like that. You know what I mean? I'm discovering it as I'm writing it, and I think that that's a really good way to be writing, rather than, you have that notion that you know everything, which America really suffers from, and you don't. So you're discovering, and as you discover, you grow.
On the end row with the hat, yeah.
I would just love to hear anything you have to say about Ptolemy Gray.
Well, my father died. He had lung cancer, and it was an awful thing. And my mother was, as many problems as I had with my mother, she was so good about my dad. I mean, like, she just kept him. They were there. He died in the bed with her, I mean, and then she slowly kind of faded into dementia, and like, it was so crazy. Like I was talking to these, various organizations that are helping me with my mom, And they're saying, well, she doesn't know what she wants. You should have her institutionalized. And I said, well, she don't want to be institutionalized. She doesn't know. I mean, and I said, look, when I was 2 years old, I didn't know either. She didn't put me in an institution. Fuck is wrong with you, It's like, and it was like a woman who came and took care of my mother, like for a while, like for 4 days. Every day after she would take care of my mother, I'd call my mother. I'd say, Mom, what did, how was it? And she'd go, I didn't like her. And then she would say all kinds of crazy stuff. And then the next time, I didn't like her. And she'd say some different crazy stuff. And the 4 days in a row. So finally I fired her. And the woman called me and she said, I hear you're letting me go. And I said, yeah, that's right. And she goes, can I ask you why? And I said, yeah, because my mom doesn't like you. And she goes, is that the only reason? I said, the fact that you asked me that question means she's right. I mean, so what I did was I learned my mother's language, which changed, every day to a point. There came a point where, we could no longer converse, but still we could look at each other and converse like that. And so I had all this knowledge, so I had to put it somewhere. So, there was my father and there's my mother, and I kind of put them together, and I created Ptolemy Gray and my kind of hopeful, magical moment in that book. And that's why, I've written a screenplay for it, and Sam Jackson wants to star in it. We just can't get anybody to make it. So, we keep trying, though. I think we just keep trying. So maybe one day.
And on the end, further back, in the black shirt.
How can you tell what color these people's shirts are? I couldn't see that.
All I can see, if I can see a sleeve, I can see.
Could you explain the process whereby you came to make the film Devil in a Blue Dress with Carl Franklin as director?
Well, I wanted, I wrote the book, and everybody wants to make a movie, though I'm one of those people who doesn't believe anything's ever going to happen, so I didn't think it was going to happen. I had a meeting with Denzel Washington, but I had kind of learned from all my film friends that you never sell a project to a movie star, because then the project, it becomes about them. So I didn't sell it to him. But then Carl came and said, I'm going to make this movie with Denzel Washington. I said, oh, great. You're a wonderful director, and you're a really good guy, and you're a really good writer. So let's do it. It was very simple, And, he made a great film, It was really good. I mean, there's just a couple of sex scenes I would have liked to have seen in it, but, Can't have everything. You have to make it in France, I guess,
Here in the front, this striped shirt.
She's going to hold it. You want to take it, but it's not going to happen.
Got it. This is kind of a follow-up to the last question. I was encouraged to hear that you've got a pilot in the works with FX. Mm-hmm. And when I was reading the Easy Rawlins series years ago, it was really easy to visualize a lot of them as movies. And you had a real strong sense of place and the sense of character. The fact that there wasn't a series that came out of it, the one movie we just talked about. But do you ever give any thought as to why Hollywood or whoever the powers that be are on those things didn't jump right in and go to town with that?
Say what?
Why Hollywood didn't jump in and sort of run with?
It's very interesting, because we mentioned Jack Reacher earlier, right? Like, people don't want to really learn. You go to movies on a date, right? Like the date, and the date has a particular end that you want, and so you don't. What are you laughing about? I was thinking about popcorn. Anyway, the end of the date has, like an end that a telos, as they say in philosophy. And so people want the simplest thing possible. It wasn't going to be simple making Easy Rawlins, and it wasn't going to be easy making Easy Rawlins, And so, and even though it made a ton of money in DVD and being on television and international sales and stuff like that, it only just about broke even at the box office. And for some reason that's the excuse they give. Yeah, but I don't feel bad about it. It's not about being black or white or male or female. It's more about where a certain group of people who definitely didn't go to school to learn their trade make their decisions, and sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong, you know?
Here in the front.
Okay. Who is your favorite writer, if you want to mention some names? American and international, both.
You know, that's such a difficult question. I mean, you know, like if you were saying who, you know, like I was thinking, because very often people ask who influenced you, you know, which is an interesting question because, you know, all writers lie about that, you know. Yes, yes. Well, favorite and influential. I mean, I know. I'm going to answer your question. Don't worry. You don't have to worry. I'm going to answer your question. But you know, it's not a person. Like I don't have, you know, relationships with writers either that I've met or haven't met. I mean, I studied with Ed O'Brien, and really, there's not a better writer in the English language. Period. Not a better one. And also, she's the most beautiful person you could ever see. You know, so like, I could close my eyes and listen to her brogue, or I could open my eyes and just look at her, and I was like, damn, this is great. But you know, it's not the person, it's the book. So, you know, 100 Years of Solitude, The Simple Stories of Langston Hughes, then, you know, things that many people in here might not know, like Roger Zelazny, you know, Shadow Jack. I mean, you know, it's like, there are books that I loved reading, and that's where I stay. But you know, the person, you know, I mean, I don't think about it. You know, it's like, because you know, good writers write bad books. Good writers write books that I don't like. You know, and so you know, it's not that. You know, it's just what that book, you know, did. I love Moby Dick. I think it's an extraordinary book. You know, there's some of Dickens I like, and a lot of Dickens I don't. You know, I mean, but you know, it's like book by book.
Well, we probably should go towards the back. Let's
Yeah,
see.
we should.
How about all the way in the far back?
There's somebody in the
Because I probably
street.
overlooked you 13 times. Yes. Yeah. There's his mic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I became familiar with your writing when I was in college via Bill Clinton. He used to read your books. So I was just wondering, as you ever met him and complimented him for introducing your books.
Huh. I don't know. I mean, I had dinner at the White House twice while he was president. And then one time he was in Washington, and there was like a cocktail party, and I got invited, which is nice. And I teach screenplay writing at Sundance once or twice a year, and I was, you know, in this room, you know, talking to this woman about her script. It's a one-on-one thing, and he called to say how much he liked Charcoal Joe. So that was nice. I like that, you know. But the truth is, I like anybody who reads my books and like them, I like them the same level. You know what I mean? It's great that if it's the President of the United States, but I'm like Bob Marley in that way. You know, so, that's nice. The Prince wants to see me. I tell him to come on over. You know.
And the blue T-shirt standing up.
Yeah, the standing guy behind you. His hands.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you go about writing Mouse? He does not seem like a character you'd want in your head very often.
You know, a lot of people think that when I was writing about Easy, that it was my father. And it's true that Easy did a lot of things my father did, but my father was much more like Mouse than he was like Easy. And so, yeah, he was like, my father was like a dangerous guy. And so when I'm writing for Mouse, you know, I imagine that grin of my father's, you know. I mean, he used to talk to me and say, oh, in Fifth Ward, he said, you know, the police would leave on Friday night and they'd come back on Sunday morning to count the bodies. I always had 2 guns and 1 knife, always, at least, you know. And sometimes I carry my friend's guns. And there are other stories he told me, which I'm not going to tell you. But Mouse is a very familiar character to me. And as long as I don't have to actually sit there in a room with him, I'm okay. Yeah.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I think it's fascinating. You have a scene in Charcoal Joe where this terrifying man is saying that the scariest man he knows is Easy Rawlins, and Easy says, "Why me?" He says, "Well, it's everybody you know."
Yeah, Easy has some really tough friends. You know, Redbird, Mouse, Fearless Jones. I mean, all of them, you know.
And they're all a sort of private army to aim at whoever. So yeah. Don't cross easy Rawlins. Maybe one more question before we go. Yeah, how about it?
I'm struck by the way you mentioned about you who think you are white. I just finished listening to Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, and he makes a large point of that. But it made me think about there are a lot of black writers now, and do you all ever kind of get together? I mean, Zadie Smith and Coleman McCarthy. I mean, there's just a lot going on, and I think it's an interesting perspective that I wish more people could glom onto.
Well, I mean, I have a very, very particular answer to that question. One, I know. Listen, you see the way he spells his name, and you think it's Ta-Nehisi, but I mean, everybody who knows him calls him Ta-Nehisi. Ta-Nehisi's father and I, Ta-Nehisi's father is my best friend, Paul Coates, publisher of Black Classic Press, the head of the Black Panthers in Baltimore in the late 60s. People say to me, have you read Ta-Nehisi's Black Panther? I said, no, but I met his father, the original Black Panther. And I said, so obviously we know each other, but I think that, there are moments, what happens as mystery writers, there used to be a wonderful person and writer, Eleanor Taylor Bland, who was a black mystery writer. She helped, launch Sisters in Crime. And when she died, but when she was alive, all the black mystery writers did things all over the country together. I mean, because she held us together. But, you need that person. It's not, how because writers by themselves, we're a little bit competitive and we're a little bit, alone on our own and we're all doing our own business. We don't rely on each other, for much, though we could. But, every once in a while you get those people who, just bring people together and it's wonderful. Eleanor Taylor Bland was an extraordinary person.
She was, yeah. I think we might actually have time for one more quickie. Do we have? You choose someone you can get to.
She'll go meet you. She'll meet you halfway.
Okay.
Thank you. I just love any books with Socrates, and I wish you could just speak about Socrates for a little while.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. That really is short, Yeah, well, thank you. You know what happened. The reason I wrote Socrates was that, I was at my publisher, and they said, well, we're going to have you're Jewish and you're black, and Jewish book fairs are really good. A lot of people come, they all buy the book. So we're going to send you on a tour of Southern Jewish book festivals. Atlanta and Jackson, and I said, okay, sign with me, I'm Jewish. You're right, I am Jewish, that'd be cool. But always when I would sit in front of an audience, it was great because everybody had already bought and read the book. It was great. But always, right here, there were three, little ladies. They were different in every place, but they were the same little ladies. And they all, they were, tricky. They say, so we see the black influence in this book, but what about the Jewish side? And I would try to be, smart. So, well, my mother was, she's very literate, and she's, kind of wonderful, and, and an oppressed minority. And they said, no, we know. It's where, because in this particular book, Easy was reading Hadrian. She goes, it's where Easy is reading Hadrian. That's the Jewish part. And I'm saying, I didn't know Hadrian was Jewish, and and it really didn't make me mad. I mean, they bought my book and everything, but the thing is that I wanted to create a black philosopher that nobody else would claim. That the three ladies would just sit there and say, that's very interesting what he did, And so that's where Socrates comes from. It's me. He didn't come from college. He didn't come through religion. He wasn't a lawyer. He went to prison where black men learned philosophy. It's true. It's where a lot of black culture comes from. It comes from being incarcerated, either in slavery or later on in after slavery. And I wanted to write that character And then Socrates, for me, it's been wonderful. I love writing him. It's just I can't do it all the time. He's a very specific kind of character, and he has a really interesting trajectory that I have to, stop doing everything else and concentrate on. And thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming.